The following is a Claibs online production. Lunch with Claibs and Joe on claibsonline.com.
And welcome on in. It is another edition of Lunch with Claibs and Joe. I am Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Mike Claiborne. As Claibs, we're coming to you on a Wednesday today due to the holiday on Monday and then the doubleheader on yesterday. The schedule just it worked out for us to be a little delayed this week.
Yeah, well, there's so much going on, obviously, and with baseball, this is doubleheader week for the Cardinals. We played 3 in a week's worth of games, and
4 in 8 days.
Yeah, so we have another one tomorrow. But it's good to be on today with you. We have a whole lot of stuff to talk about, man. So much is going on, and let's get to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, here on Claibs Online, we're powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Mungenast Alton Toyota, Mungenast St. Louis Acura. As that's where we were last Monday with Polo Asensio, as he's back in town now doing the games at home. And let's start though, Claibs. I know you've been making the rounds on TV, radio, where have you, talking about the late great Lou Brock, who passed away this past weekend at the age of 81. I know that was a guy that you were really close to all your years covering the Cardinals. What can be said that you haven't said so far about number 20?
Well, that's a good question. You're right. It has been a touching, challenging week losing Lou. I'm one of those people, when a person leaves us, I always try and think about the last good memory I had with them. And I was just telling somebody, I don't think I ever saw Lou have a bad day. And I asked Mike Shannon that question, and he remembered just one time that, he wasn't the Lou that, we expected him to see. But I always felt like Lou lit up a room because of his presence. And it wasn't one where he was walking around as if he was running for governor or something. He was a kind person. And we don't see it as much as we normally would. But every player, and I remember in spring training, Tony used to implore the young players to go introduce themselves to the Hall of Famers that would be down in spring training. Some guys would be a little bashful about it, but Lou was the sort of guy, he'd come up and introduce himself to you. And that's what I think I probably come away with, thinking more about his positive approach about life. And it wasn't like he was a golly gee whiz cheerleader or anything. It was just his demeanor, along with his toughness. The guy had 3,000 hits. He stole 938 bases. And if anybody who's stolen 9 bases will tell you that the physical toll it can take on your body is something that, sometimes you're never the same. But in Lou's case, he never went on the disabled list. With all the things that happened in his career, you think about the length, you think about 3,000 hits, you think about playing every day, you think about stealing 900 bases plus, you never spent a day on the disabled list. That's unheard of today. So those are some of the things that stood out for me.
You say that, what did he have any kind of streak during his career that was Gehrig, Ripken-esque? Did he come close to any of those type of numbers?
No, I'm not really sure. Nothing jumps out at me. Let's just put it that way, as far as what he did streak-wise. I'm sure somebody's got something somewhere stashed away on something he may have done, but nothing stands out to me.
Yeah, so he passes away, and I've seen the tributes just flowing in. And Polo and I talked about this yesterday on the pregame show, that Vin Scully now on Twitter, as he's been tweeting out some memories, and he had a nice tribute to Lou Brock. They sure saw enough of each other, the Dodgers and the Cardinals back then. And I know that Vin Scully had some fond memories of him. And another person that passed away this past week too was Tom Seaver. And just how's this for irony? Tom Seaver, the batter he faced the most in his career was Lou Brock.
Yeah.
Lou Brock, the pitcher that he faced the most in his career was Tom Seaver, and both of them passing away the same week.
And now Seaver's somewhere in heaven trying to figure out how to keep Brock off base. It won't change between those two. Those two will have some great conversations, I'm sure.
That's is there any, as you look back, is there any moment that those two faced each other that stands out to you? Any kind of memory there?
No, not really. I thought about that earlier, and nothing really came about. that would really stand out. You know, I mean, you have to remember Lou played in an era, in my opinion, the beginning of the end of the last great era of baseball, where every team had 3-4 guys who were bona fide, if not Hall of Famers, borderline Hall of Famers. So he was facing a good player every night. And in that era, they all started to run together, is what I'm saying, with regard to the skill set and the competition level.
Yeah. So we had. So they put the 20 on the field. I imagine that's going to stay there for most of the year, right there behind second base, where Lou Brock spent a majority of his career sliding in to second base with all of his stolen bases. And it's also fitting too. Just last week on this day in Cardinal history, we had the audio of him breaking Ty Cobb's stolen base record. So we had that memory of him before then. Have you talked? You were saying you talked to Mike Shannon about it, Tim McCarver, Rick Hummel. Who else have you reached out to this past week?
Quite a few. Talked to Bob Gibson's wife a little bit the other day. Willie McGee, just people who knew Lou, and I know Lou's son. I know Lou, we call him LC. I have not had a chance to reach out to him yet. I know he's got his hands full, but we will cross paths soon. And, one of the neat things is everybody had the same stories about how cool Lou was. And I think for me, Joe, I grew up watching him play as a kid. So now, fast forward, I'm in the business. Now, I didn't cover Lou Brock. I'm not that old. But when I got to meet him, and one of the things in our business, and I'm sure you've had it happen to you, an athlete or somebody in the industry that you've admired or liked from a distance, and then you get a chance to meet them, and you're just hoping they're everything you thought they would be. And Lou was that and then some, because he was just a cool cat, man. I mean, Lou was always impeccably dressed. I wouldn't care whether it was for a Hall of Fame induction ceremony or a car wash. He was the best dressed guy there. Didn't make a difference. And it was just how he carried himself. But everybody had similar stories. I don't think Lou had many bad days with people.
Moving on to yesterday, the doubleheader, as we talked about, doubleheader Saturday against the Cubs, doubleheader yesterday, doubleheader Thursday, and then is it another doubleheader on Saturday? Is that the way the schedule?
I hope not.
Works out. as I'm looking, I mean, it's hard to keep track of. All
I'm
the
looking it up
now.
I just show up at the ballpark and they say, "Are we going to play one or two?" And I just say, "Okay." So Saturday.
Next Monday they have another.
Next Monday we're in Milwaukee. Yeah, we got one in Milwaukee. So that'll be a treat. We have two in Milwaukee next week.
Two doubleheaders in Milwaukee. Yeah, they do Monday and Tuesday.
And then we have one in Pittsburgh on Friday. So we got a lot of baseball in store for next week.
We look at the rotation is what's going to take the biggest hit for this. Yeah, the Cardinals have their problems offensively. They need to find outfielders that can hit. But when you look at where I don't care if the doubleheaders are only 7 innings long. The rotation is going to start taking a hit because you're not talking about 5 guys that are starting. We're having to start talking about 7, 8 starters that are going to be able to go out there and at least give you 4 or 5 innings to take some of the weight off of this bullpen. And now you lose KK. You're not sure when he's coming back at all this year. Wainwright's been pitching just phenomenally so far. I would say that if it wasn't for the 2 weeks off, and I think that's going to hurt the number of games that Wainwright's going to pitch, Wainwright should be in the conversation for Cy Young right now. If it wasn't for Yu Darvish and Jacob deGrom and what they're doing, I think Wainwright's right up there at number 3, but he's going to get hurt by the lack of starts that he's going to end up having. Flaherty, we haven't seen Flaherty pitch like we saw him pitch last year yet. Carlos Martinez is coming off COVID, and that's going to hurt him in the long run. I really fear that they've run out of arms towards that final week of the season.
Well, I think the arms are going to come from the bullpen. I think that's a bigger concern because they're going to be throwing every other day. I think you can get away with it. It's going to be a stretch, and somebody, whether it's Ponce or Carlos, somebody's going to have to show up and give them 5 or 6 good innings. Okay. I think the general plan is if you can get 4 or 5 without getting scuffed up too bad, you might be able to pull it off with your bullpen if you're dealing with the double headers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other games, that's a little bit of a different situation because you're set up a little differently. But I said from the beginning that the Cardinals can only win this thing because they can outpitch everybody, and I still feel that way. I mean, you look around some of the other teams, and they don't have enough pitching. I mean, the Cubs proved that over the weekend. They don't have enough pitching. The Dodgers just beat the hell out of everybody, so they don't really rely on as much pitching compared to the offense. San Diego has pitching, but these are guys that are new and relatively unknown. So I don't know if really it's as bad as it appears, because at least the guys who were running out there have major league experience. So I think the challenge would be more in your bullpen. And do you stretch guys out more? Where, let's say you use Reyes for 2 innings instead of 1. Does that mean you don't bring him back for a day, or is it 2 days? So I think there's just so many things that come up that you have to look at with regard to how you utilize the bullpen. Maybe I think more than the starters. Now, granted, the starters have to keep it close early. But the way the Cardinals don't score runs, I think that's a bigger concern to me than the pitching.
Cardinals still undefeated in games they score at least 5 runs. So that's been the threshold.
Well, who isn't?
The thing is, unbeaten though is one thing. You could still, they get out there, they hit that 5-run mark. They've won every game so far this year.
You're supposed to.
Yes, you're supposed to, yeah. But it's good to have that 0 in the loss column there. I'm looking at. When I'm looking at the way that bullpen's used, so far, to my knowledge, in these doubleheaders, we have not seen Schilt bring back a guy that had pitched in game 1 and bring him back in game 2. Have we? If they pitch game 1, they've been off in game 2. And in a regular 162 game season, when there is a rare doubleheader, you might see that. You might see the closer come in and shut it down. But in these short seasons, when you have doubleheader after doubleheader after doubleheader, when you're throwing a guy like Reyes out there for those 2 innings, you know that you have a completely different bullpen in game 2, and you almost have to have that A squad, B squad, that split squad in the bullpen.
No, you're right.
That you know that, okay, if Gallegos is closing my game 1, that means I'll use Miller to close out game 2. And you have to know that going in, and that's going to be a real test with all of these double headers they have coming up, because today, here we're sitting here recording on Wednesday. This is the last off day that the Cardinals will have until the postseason.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think that the reason why I like their chances is I don't know if I've met a more prepared person than Mike Schilt. And I'd say the same thing about Mike Maddox. These guys are really prepared. They have a plan B, C, and D. Maybe it works. Maybe they never have to use it. I don't know. But I like the preparedness of these guys and what they can do with their players. They got some young arms, and that helps. So I just think we just got to play this inning by inning. I don't think you can look beyond game 1 of tomorrow, because you don't know what your bullpen is going to look like, and you don't know what you're going to have for game 2.
I know you were doing radio Sunday night. Did you happen to see Schilt's interview?
I heard about it. Yeah, I saw it later. and I think not because Mike Schilt is a friend, but I think if you're going to interview a manager, 2 things you have to understand here. 1, you should do it between innings.
Yeah.
2, you should ask 2 questions. The NBA asked 2 questions. The NFL asked 2 questions. They asked 2 questions. And then get the hell out of here. We got a game going on. So why do they think it was important to interview Mike Schilt in a game? Interview him between innings. That's the way they used to do it. And I don't know why they felt they needed to do it then. And I appreciate Mike Schilt. Mike Schilt's not there to talk to ESPN. He's there to manage a ball game. And for ESPN, who I think has just done a slacking job in how they've handled some things behind the scenes, don't get me started on them, okay? But for them to do that and then have Vasgersian come back, and I like Matt. I've gotten to know him a little bit. I think he does a nice job. But the subtle backhanded remarks, if I'm Mike Schilt, man, the hell with you. I'm not talking to anybody. I want to continue to manage if it's okay with you guys.
They had Paul DeYoung mic'd up too, and that was an odd choice to me, because you know better than I do that talking to Paul DeYoung, if he gets started talking hitting, it's one of the most intelligent conversations that you can get into with a current ball player about the aspects that go into being in the batter's box and hitting a baseball. That doesn't play well on ESPN, though. That doesn't play well when you have Fernando Tatis doing an inning before the day before. You're going to get an entirely different conversation out of Paul DeJong talking during an ESPN game.
But who else are you going to talk to on the infield? You can't talk to Carpenter about hitting. Paul Goldschmidt doesn't say anything.
Does it have to be an infielder?
Well, who in the outfield would you want to talk to?
Mike Bader up. Mic him up and talk to him. He and A-Rod could have a good conversation.
About hitting?
Just about anything. Not hitting,
okay.
no.
All right. I think that they were limited on their choices, and they went with DeJong. I personally like the idea of them doing it. I wish they would do more, but I think you have to understand that in some cases your talent pool may not be as plentiful as you'd like for it to be. So you have to figure out how you can drive the bus in a direction that they can hop on and go with you on, compared to trying to help them solve a Rubik's Cube.
Do you think that played into the misplay at shortstop when he was live?
No,
it was a tough play. I mean, it was a tough play. It just so happened that he was mic'd up when it happened. So I don't know if you had heard or talked to anybody about that. So they did. The big news was them sending down Dylan Carlson. They sent him back to Springfield. Do you think we see him again this month?
Yes. I'll tell you, guys. There's two guys in Springfield that have to just be pissed off right now, and that's Austin Dean.
He's still on the COVID list?
He is?
I thought he's still
I don't think so.
Being on the COVID list.
I don't think so.
I thought he and Whitley were the only two that were still listed as not fully healthy.
And Armando Sosa.
Okay.
If it's me, and I know this is a drastic move, I'd put DeJong at third, put Sosa at short. He's got the best hands on the team, and he hasn't been given a chance to help this ball club. Or maybe I put him at third and just leave Edmund in the outfield. I mean, this guy deserved a chance. He had a heck of a spring. He was doing everything he needed to do. There just hasn't been an opportunity presented to him. But, I think you see Carlson again. I do. Let's face it. The guys that he is sitting down for aren't lighting it up. I mean, the Cardinal outfield right now is not producing at the level that we need them to. And you don't have a lot of options out there right now, especially with Fowler down. So somebody's got to do something. So I don't know how Carlson can get himself straightened out in a short period of time, but I think something's got to happen. I really believe in him as a player. But, they start throwing him that soft stuff, man, and off-speed stuff. And it's interesting how everybody who's on this team, especially the outfielders, and I'll use Bader and O'Neill, get them out on the soft stuff, man. Get them out on their waist. Somebody's got to be teaching them, hey, look, this is how you approach the soft stuff. This is what you look for. I don't know how it works. I'm not in on the hitters meetings, but there's a common problem here with all three of those guys. And let's throw Lane Thomas into that equation too.
And the problem doesn't just stop there, because you're seeing guys who struggled last year that have gone on and they're producing now with other teams. Randy Arozarena and Marcell Ozuna the past 2 weeks have been really, really good down with Tampa and Atlanta. And these are guys that could never – Ozuna was probably the best hitter in the playoffs last year for the Cardinals, and they let him walk.
I still wouldn't want him back.
With the troubles of the outfield right now, you wouldn't want Marcell Ozuna back right now.
No. Why? I didn't think he was a Cardinal. I didn't think he was a guy that was conducive to help some other players be better. I think it was good that they let him walk.
What about trading a Arozarena?
Oh, I didn't understand that one.
Do you think that had to do? Do you think that had to do with going live on the?
I don't think so. I think they felt there were some guys that were further along than him. Mm-hmm. How they came to that conclusion when he lit up the minors, didn't get as many opportunities to play in the majors, but certainly was as good of an athlete as any of those other guys were. So I thought that was a bad move.
It adds on to some of the questionable trades and moves that we've seen when you look at an outfield that has all batting averages of 180 right now, with Fowler being on the injured list, and you look around baseball at all of the other Cardinals, former Cardinals that are there lighting it up. And I know that there's some that there weren't plays, like Luke Voigt, a guy like him, there wasn't a place for him. the Cardinals when they didn't have the DH. Probably the same thing for Jose Martinez, who was also optioned by the Cubs about a week after they got him. But it brings into question some of the moves that have been made recently, and just it's frustrating to see these guys excelling where they are when the offense here is having the issues that they are. And outside of Carlson and I mean Dean and Sosa being down in Springfield and wondering when they're going to come back up, there isn't an option outside of that. It does look like that well's starting to dry up in the minors that we've seen recently.
Yeah, but you know what? That can be said for everybody. I mean, everybody's trying to find a spark somewhere. You can't tell me there isn't a legitimate major league prospect that isn't playing for a big league team right now, considering how things have unfolded.
This year, yeah.
I think the disappointment is not the fact that you moved some players. It's the disappointment is the players that you moved them for, they aren't producing. Yeah. They weren't producing last year. And everybody felt like, well, they'll be ready to go this year. And granted, this has been an incredible year for everyone. And some have adjusted, most haven't. But we're at a point now where it seems like, as is COVID, bad hitting is contagious.
Yeah, Ravello's he's gotten a few more at-bats. Maybe he's a guy that you give a little bit more time to. 2 RBIs already since he's returned in his last 3 starts. So we'll see if maybe that's a spark plug they could get. By the last thing on yesterday's game, do you recall the longest at bat that you've ever seen? Matt Wieters went 19 pitches yesterday. Can you recall a guy ever making it 20?
Yeah, you know what? I thought about it yesterday, and I saw it maybe about 6 or 7 years ago. It was a home game, and it was late. And I want to say Sergio Romo was on the mound. But it was just, get it over with. And I don't remember the end result, but I got to tell you, I was more exhausted than Wieters was yesterday after that at bat. It was a tough at bat. And I commend the pitcher. He just kept laying it in there and said, here, I dare you to hit it. And he gave him more arm action than velocity. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the reasons why Wieters was out in front on a lot of pitches. But it was fun to watch. It was certainly that. You just don't see it very often.
10 of those 19 pitches came full count with the bases loaded. So I imagine the runners too.
They're just doing wind sprints. Yeah, you're right. 20-yard wind sprint.
God. Hey, before we move on to everything else, just want to give a quick shout out to one of our sponsors, Ryan Kelly, the home loan expert. Find him online at thehomeloanexpert.com. Claibs, you were talking last week about interest rates, and as low as they are these days. They are
low, and low. And the neat thing about Ryan Kelly and his outfit is the fact that they can get your process fairly quick. They can close within 30 days. And there are a lot of things that they can provide for you that a lot of people just can't because of their volume. But the service, is, I think, is important as anything. Because remember, other than your family, your home is probably the largest investment you'll ever make. And you want to have somebody who understands how important that is to you and to your future. And for people who've done it before and have done it on countless occasions. And I just think personal service is important for something of this nature. That's why Ryan Kelly and the Home Loan Expert are number one at what they do. And if you don't believe me, just give them a call and talk to them yourself, and they'll answer any question you have. And certainly when you hang up, you'll be a lot smarter than you were before you called them.
Also, lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Munganess Alton Toyota. Quickly on the Blues, before we get into a lot of football talk on the show. The Blues traded Jake Allen to the Canadians 1 week ago for a 2020 7th round pick, and a 2022 7th round pick in return, getting a 3rd rounder for this upcoming draft and a 7th round pick in the upcoming draft. Those picks coming from the Washington Capitals and the Chicago Blackhawks. So it's mostly a salary cap move, as Jake Allen helped them get the cup and was the best goalie in the bubble that the Blues had.
Yeah, but he didn't have a future here.
Nope.
And I understand why they did it. Wish him luck. He's not going to play very much in Montreal with Carey Price there. I mean, they got a lot of money invested in goaltenders there. I wouldn't be surprised to see Jake Allen be exposed to the expansion draft. I think you might see him out there, or he may move again before this is over with. But, frees up some money for the Blues if they elect to sign Pietrangelo. But, I think they've got some other issues they need to address also. The Tarasenko thing is concerning, but I think the Blues need another legitimate goal scorer. The Blues, in my opinion, didn't score with regularity up front. If it wasn't for their defensemen, they would have been in big trouble this year like they would have been last year. So, while we're waiting on Jaden Schwartz, he's a competent guy, but where the other – is it going to come from Sammy Blais or some of these other – I don't think so.
And Tarasenko's not going to play till at least February or March of next year. So
does this mean that Clem Costin gets a better look at a higher line or second line? Jordan Kyrou will get a look on a second line where he can actually use his offensive skills compared to being a checker. So I think they've got some real questions to ask themselves, and maybe they look around in the market for a goal scorer on another team that may be near the end of a contract that the team is looking to dump. So there are a lot of options that they have out there. This will be a busy offseason for the St. Louis Blues.
Moving on to the news in football. We're going to start low. We're going to end with the NFL. But it was announced today that the St. Louis County has said no games for high school football in 2020. They are still waiting on other high contact sports. They have new guidelines for those, but Dr. Sam Page has said no to football in St. Louis County. So while you're looking out and out in West County, there are football games being played. Here in Illinois, nothing. There's nothing here in the state of Illinois, but you're seeing in Missouri that just a few miles past St. Louis, there's football being played, and there have not been any issues. But in the city, in the St. Louis County, it's no go for 2020.
I think you touched on something. There have not been any issues. You forgot one thing yet, and I know this is an inconvenience and it's a disappointment for people, but maybe if people would adhere to some of the requests that the health officials have asked. See, this isn't Sam Page. This is the health department advising Sam Page. So we're dealing with the science who understands that, hey, look, we got a spike. The only way we need to do something about it, we've got to reduce the crowds. I have no problem with this decision, none, because we have decided that we're going to make this about individuals compared to the entire community. And if somebody wants to do it in a different county, we think, oh, they're doing it. Why can't we do it? Well, this is bigger than the games to me. And just because they say, well, the kids can't hurt it, they won't get it, but they can spread it to somebody else who may not be physically able to handle it. And it's a virus, okay? It's contagious, and it's obviously showing different effects on different people. So if you don't wear the mask and if you don't keep your distance, then you're going to have a problem. And if you have a problem, if it's your problem today, it's my problem tomorrow. If it's my problem tomorrow, it's somebody else's problem on Friday. And we've got to take into account this is more serious than a freaking game. Everybody's being inconvenienced by this. And it's ironic that the people who are doing the most bitching about this are the players, the coaches, the parents. Okay. I don't have a dog in this fight. All right. But I have a dog with regard to health. People in the media, they obviously want it because if we don't have games, they don't have anything to cover. So it's a cyclical effect here. But I think we have to nip this thing. We have to head it off, man. I mean, it's taking too many lives and it's continuing to spike in St. Louis. And here's the other asinine thing I've heard. Well, nobody's dying. But have we not learned that with each individual that has a different impact? We are learning that there are heart conditions that come with it. There was just a report that came out recently that said the respiratory issues may be with you for at least 6 months. There's so many things that have a lot to do with your well-being that may not have anything to do with immediate death, but maybe a long-lasting effect. And it's amazing how we don't want to pay attention to that sort of stuff until it happens to somebody in your family, Hopefully not you.
Well, you mentioned that there haven't been any deaths. There was a college football player who passed away with it earlier this morning. Jermaine Stevens of California University of Pennsylvania, the son of the former Steelers first-round draft pick. He died at the age of 20 this morning due to COVID complications. He was a lineman for the California University of Pennsylvania. So a college football player passed away from complications due to it.
And if there was one group of athletes that certainly doesn't need to be involved in this, wouldn't you think it's football players with so many overweight players? And we don't know what their health conditions are. I mean, I'm sure there's a person with diabetes walking around and some other respiratory issues that may come into play. And I am certain that they are not afforded the same opportunities from a testing standpoint that the professional athletes are dealing with. So, they can't even afford books in some of these districts. They can't even afford to pay teachers what they deserve. And then you're going to tell me you're going to move those people back and then push all the athletes in front because we're going to provide their money for testing and doing all the other things that come with it. Who are you kidding?
They also in college football, we've already seen 2 weekends of games. There was one game 2 weekends ago. There were a few more. I looked at the schedule. I remember looking at the schedule on Saturday and seeing what it was, because last Saturday should have been the opening week of the college football season. And I couldn't tell you one of the teams, one of the schools that was on that list, what conference they were in. This weekend, a few other teams are opening up or were scheduled to open up. The Louisiana Tech and Baylor game that was set for Saturday in Waco, Texas, remember, I just said Louisiana Tech and Baylor. That was going to be this weekend's top game. That's how.
I got news for you.
That game's been postponed.
Gee, here's the thing. To show you how important that is, most people couldn't tell you where Louisiana Tech was or is, and most people couldn't tell you what part of Texas Baylor's in.
Right.
So I mean, these are two schools that nobody gives a rat's ass about on most Saturdays. And when it comes down to that being the marquee game, that ought to tell you how the college football scene is a mess. I don't know whether you saw the ESPN pregame show last week where they had all the analysts on talking about whether they should play or not. And it was kind of divided down the middle. I know Kirk Herbstreit thought that his kids were safer at Clemson than they would be at Chipotle. Desmond Howard said his kids wouldn't play. Even Lee Corso thought it was a bad idea. And Lee Corso has coached for a number of years and has been well respected, as all of them were. I don't want to single out any individual, but I think we have to take into account the long-lasting impact that we don't want to acknowledge, okay? And that's my concern about the impact that it has on other people. Now, if you want to isolate grandparents and seniors and people with health conditions, you better get a big room. All right, because you can't isolate everyone. I understand that the game has a massive importance to universities as far as income and student body and things of that nature. But in the end, man, it's just too much at stake. And we're all dealing with it. This isn't like this is segregated where one part is not having to deal with it compared to others. Everybody's having to take a bite out of this sandwich. And it's not a good taste to it. So for people to say, let's do it. And here's the other thing that's kind of started to bug me. I find it amusing. No, I find it insulting that so many people want to see other kids sacrifice their health and lives, and especially people of color. We've already determined that this virus has a devastating impact on people of color. And of the 80 plus people who have had real legitimate issues that are athletes in college sports, I believe 65 of them are people of color. So I got a big problem with people who think it's all right to herd all the black folks out there and let them get sick. And then, oh, don't worry, we'll take care of you later. Just like you take care of us when it comes to making sure we get an education. Just like you take care of us when you're saying little Johnny's going to play. Just like you're going to say you're going to take care of us when you're going to make sure that everything's going to be all right when he goes away to college. I am, as a parent, there's not a chance in hell my kids would be playing. And I don't believe any coach, and I don't believe any of the athletic directors, and I damn sure don't believe any of these media guys who think it's a great idea.
Yeah, you'll have 6 games this weekend that'll feature top 25 teams. I don't know what the rules are in each of those stadiums. I am very interested to watch and see how each individual school is handling attendance at these games and how many people they're letting in to some of these games, because I know it's really hit and miss in the NFL this weekend as well. That there's going to be some games that have no fans at all in the stadium, and then other ones that have maybe 10,000 in a 60,000 seat venue. So
well, how many are they going to have in that big $5 billion hole in the ground out in California?
Zero.
I love it.
I know.
I love it.
Yeah, they. I think Dean Spanos is paying more this year to Stan Kroenke than anybody will be paying for a ticket, and that's $1 to have his team play in there. They had a nice big ribbon cutting yesterday to unveil the stadium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I've been watching. I think I'm one of the 8 people in the country that watches Hard Knocks. And, the Chargers and the Rams are the featured teams, and they showed 3 seconds of Stan Kroenke yesterday with regard to the ribbon cutting ceremony. So
have they mentioned the upcoming lawsuit in St. Louis at all?
Has not been mentioned.
Yeah.
And that was the final episode. So
okay.
They got out unscathed. As a matter of fact, that's an interesting question you bring up. Spanos was featured briefly. Nobody above general manager for the Rams was mentioned or featured at all.
So no Demoff?
No Demoff. Les Snead and
because
McVay.
You haven't been able to shut them up since they moved out to L.A. And they've been telling.
Well, they gone radio silent now. Their asses are going to be hauled into court.
Sam Farmer had the article of the unveiling last week, and once again, Sam Farmer in the article quoted Kevin Demoff and Stan Kroenke about the time they first saw that piece of land and how they couldn't wait to make it into a football stadium while they were, quote, negotiating with St. Louis to keep the Rams here.
Some people just don't know when to shut up.
I could not believe that Sam Farmer wrote about that, because I've always felt in my dealings with him that he's very pro LA. The man's been wanting a football team in LA for 20 years. You'd think that he would want to do everything to keep the money and keep the team there for the long haul. But regardless, hey, it is NFL. The opening day is tomorrow. Chiefs and Texans, Thursday night football to open up the season. And then the Rams, I believe, have the Sunday night game. I think
they Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, so they'll be at that new stadium. So you'll get to see the inside of it with nobody there Sunday night. And I'll have Steve Weich of the NFL Network on my show this weekend. I'm going to ask him if the NFL Network plans on covering any of that lawsuit. He's a St. Louis guy, so hopefully I get a good answer out of him when it comes to that.
I'm going to tell you now, I doubt if they have maximum coverage on it. You have to remember who owns the NFL Network.
No max coverage. Yeah, they won't have max coverage on it. I just want to see if there's going to be a mention of it.
Sure there will be, but nothing to the point of having a vested interest in it like people in St. Louis would.
Right. We're also we're going to start a pick segment, NFL pick segment this weekend. So the details on that will come out during Weekend Joe Saturday morning. We'll throw a bunch of names in there and do some picks and keep a running tally that'll be available up on claibsonline.com all season long, and give you the details on that, and then we'll recap it every week.
Here's something we probably ought to talk about.
Yeah.
I always tell people never bet first and last games of the season because you don't know what you have.
Not a clue.
I think, and I always tell people this, I wouldn't tell anybody what kind of team you have until the 4th game. It's kind of like Flag Day. I normally say somewhere around right around Halloween is when you really know.
Have we reached COVID Flag Day yet in
no,
baseball?
No, it's come and gone.
Okay.
Yeah, it's come and gone.
All right.
But my point being, if they haven't practiced, if they haven't played another team, and you don't have a chance to see who's been out on waivers as far as helping your team, how do you know what kind of team you have, especially with teams who haven't had a lot of contact in training camp because they don't want to get anybody hurt? So, and it really kind of supports my argument even more. These guys aren't even close to being in football shape. Mm-hmm. But then again, maybe because the whole league's like that now, maybe this is the new norm for the NFL.
Even in a year like this, they didn't have any of the preseason games, so we have no idea what it's going to look like. But just for example, say the Bills come out this weekend and blow out the Jets by 40, but in week 2, and you don't know how good the Jets are. You don't know if they're going to be an 0-16 team. So, come next week when the Bills face the Dolphins, you don't know if the Bills are good or if the Jets are just really bad.
That's my point.
Yeah, so in the NFL, you really got to wait till like week 3.
Yeah, I think you have to wait at least 4 weeks because you have to wait 1 week to assess. You have to make another. You have to play another week to implement, and then you have to have another week to refine. And I think it's going to take 4 weeks.
Well, I'll give you 3 to 5 games to pick from this week, and we'll get your picks, and we'll put those up on Weekend Joe, and we'll get some other people involved in that as well. Do you have? Do you want to throw out there a Super Bowl pick this year? You don't want to do anything?
It's too early. I need to see somebody play. And let's face it, it comes up every year, the injury factor, because of the salary cap. You just don't have a lot of depth at positions like quarterback, that if he goes down, your season's basically shot. You have to be more lucky than good in that situation. I think the 2 areas you can't lose your left tackle and you can't lose your quarterback on offense. I think defensively, you better make sure you got a pass rusher and a run stopper, and you better have one shutdown corner. If you don't have those 3 on defense, you got no chance.
Well, it's going to be a little easier to give your pick on the NBA. We're down to 7 teams as last night the Miami Heat punched their ticket to the conference finals, taking out the number 1 seeded Milwaukee Bucks, which that was really, really shocking. I know Giannis was hurt. I know he had the ankle issue.
But they weren't very good when he was playing.
No, they weren't. They were down 3-0 when he was healthy. And the one game they won in the series was when he went out in the first quarter. So he didn't play that much of a factor in those in that one victory, but it's still always surprising when that 1 seed goes out. The Celtics have a chance to wrap things up tonight as they're up 3-2 on the Raptors. So I'd imagine folks in St. Louis probably rooting for Jason Tatum. And I think Claibs has frozen over there, so we'll try. There you go. We're back now. As I don't know if you heard me or not, but I said I was talking about Jason Tatum has a chance to punch his ticket to the conference finals tonight, and would imagine that's a person that a lot of people in St. Louis are cheering for.
Yeah, I would agree with you. He's had a really good season. They're a good team. I think they're going to have their hands full with Miami. I think Eric Spoelstra might be the best coach that's out there coaching in the tournament right now. When you think about his history and what he's been able to do in Miami, they've never taken a back seat after they won with LeBron. They've always remained competitive. And he can coach. He can coach a little bit. Brad Stevens was the fair-haired boy where everybody, Brad's this. Hey, Brad's never seen the conference finals before until now. And he's got to win tonight. So I think that's going to be a very interesting series. On the West, it's going to be Houston and the Clippers. Denver's too soft to be able to beat the Clippers. So it's what everybody thought.
You think the Rockets are going to beat the Lakers?
What did I said? I'm sorry.
You said
Lakers.
Houston. Yeah, you said Houston
Lakers,
and the Clippers.
Lakers
okay.
And Clippers. I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, anybody who knows me knows there's not a chance in hell the Rockets can beat the Lakers. So and it's what everybody thought. Now, the problem that you'll have is those teams will beat the hell out of each other so much they may not have enough left for the finals. I think the best thing about this thing is they don't have to travel. The travel doesn't beat them up as much, and they're obviously comfortable in the environment of the bubble now. So that's not going to be as much of a distraction or a hindrance. So it's still going to be a good series regardless. But, Miami is a team you better watch out for because they are very sound fundamentally. Boston may be a little deeper, but I like what Miami can bring to the party. And I think Spoelstra is a better coach.
Yeah. Hey, Claibs, we made it through the entire show today without bringing up Odell Beckham Jr., so good job.
You want to enlighten everybody on what Odell did?
Nope. Even though this is podcast form, people can go out there and they can Google Odell Beckham Jr.'s name the same way that I did yesterday morning when I saw he was trending, and I discovered what exactly it was that led to that. So if people don't know by now, don't look it up. I would say maybe, yeah,
it's you know what? It's another example And if you notice in the NFL, the biggest clown acts are either defensive backs, either cornerbacks or receivers, because they're so away from the huddle. They're so away from the main body of players that they still feel like they need attention. Think about it. Just go back over time. Just think about guys over the years. It's always some asshole from as a cornerback or a receiver that does something stupid and outlandish, and we just shake our heads and say, if he was only as good as the hype, he'd be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, some are. Terrell Owens, one of those guys that's made it.
Ocho Cinco. I mean, they think about it. Now, there are other guys, and I'm going to separate Deion from this category because Deion was never a social challenge off the field. He might have had a lot of things to say, but Deion never disrespected an opponent. He always played hard. He was just a guy who was proud of his skill set. So I don't put him in that category, but there are so many other clown acts that have come and gone. And once they were out of the league, we were like, oh, that's right. He was in the NFL because people don't care, and they think this is the way they brand themselves, but it really doesn't have an impact because this game changes too quickly and guys like this will come and go.
Yeah. So we wrap it up. Do you have any interviews lined up this week? I know it's a real busy week of baseball for you.
I'm trying to just get through the baseball week. We got some things in the offset for next week. Hopefully we'll get to.
Yeah, this week and next week you will definitely be very busy on the Cardinals radio network. By the way, I listened to an inning of Polo and Benji the other day, and I texted Polo what I thought happened in the half inning, and I was exactly right. So I was very
well. It didn't hurt that you were watching the game on TV while you were.
No, I was in my car and I'm listening to Polo and Benji call the game, and then I texted Polo and I said, "Hey, I haven't looked at my phone yet." I said, I'm listening, and here's what I think just happened in that half inning. And I went and I looked, and sure enough, I had it exactly right. So I thought it was a called strike 3, but it was a swinging strike 3. That was the only part I got wrong.
So now yo habla inglés mucho grande.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
I know that I can listen to Polo, and I can tell by how excited he gets with certain names and stuff that I can kind of get an idea of what happened in a game. But I'm going to try that more. And by next year, Polo and I hopefully have a bilingual podcast as well.
I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. I have I'll have Howard Balzer and I'll have Steve Weich on my show this weekend, still efforting a baseball guest to talk Cardinals. But that's what we have lined up along with the NFL pick segment on Weekend Joe. You've been listening to and watching Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com, our Facebook and our Twitter page. Also our YouTube page, have it up there as well. Powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura, Mungenast Alton Toyota, and also financed by the home loan expert Ryan Kelly. Find him online at thehomeloanexpert.com. For Mike Claiborne, I'm Joe Roderick. We'll talk to you next week, everybody. Thanks for watching.